So this video is about 4 common problems or frustrations that you may face at your school, at your job as an ALT. Now I've been, as I've said in other videos, I've been a teacher for 30 years, I've been an ALT for the last several years, and I found that at each company, at each school, there's a common set of problems that you're going to experience, at least some subset of these. So let's talk about 4 main sort of common problems and frustrations and what you can do to, if not solve them completely, sort of ameliorate them. Let's get into it. The first big issue at hand is recognizing that there is a split, a divide between the company that you are contracted with and the school where you are located. In other words, you're working for this company at this school, and they are very often, of course, this goes without saying, not in the same place, right? Your company may be in a different city or even a different prefecture than the school where you actually work day to day, and that can lead to some problems. One problem has to do with the evaluations that the company will make of you. Because your manager on the corporate side is not in the classroom with you on a daily basis, they need to get, when making their evaluations of you as an ALT, they need to get their information secondhand from other teachers in the school. So the teachers at the school will write a report or several reports through the year, if it's depending on the company, and then send those to the company. But it's an indirect process is what I'm saying. My point here is that as ALT, it's important for you to know who it is at the school, which teacher or teachers it is at the school that are in charge of, communicating with the ALT company. And then you need to not suck up to those teachers, not kiss their ass. No, that's not what I'm saying. But make sure that they have the accurate information. So, bringing it back to me, I was at a school a couple of years ago, and it occurred to me to ask, okay, who is the teacher, who is the Madoguchi, Japanese Madoguchi, the teacher in charge of the communication with the ALT company at this school. And it turned out to be the Kyomu Buchou sensei, who was the last person I would have guessed it was. And this teacher, whom I'd hardly ever talked to, is the one, or what turned out to be the one, who was actually in charge of communicating back and forth with the company. So after that, I made it a point to make sure that he saw me come into work in the morning, that when I said, "Ohayou gozaimasu," good morning at work in the morning, that he was among the teachers that saw that I was actually there and like that. And in your case too, it will behoove you to know who the teacher is who's in charge of communicating with the company. Another problem that can arise due to this divide, this split between the company and the school, is that there can be a miscommunication between the school and the company. So here's, again, this is a story, bringing it back to me. This is a problem that I had. I was at a school, actually the same school, a couple of years ago. And because the 4th grade classrooms were right next to the small staff room that I was in, I was always, whenever I was going to or returning from a class, I was in the habit of poking my head in and saying, during that 10-minute break time between classes, of saying hello and sort of interacting with the students. I thought that was a good thing. It turns out that at least one of the teachers, the 3 in that case, 4th grade teachers, felt that I was a little bit, I don't know, what's the word, noisy, a little bit disruptive, because this teacher's point was that the 10-minute break between classes is it's not really a break per se at all. It's more of a time for the students to clean up after the previous class, to get ready for the next class, go to the bathroom, like that. And this teacher felt that I was sort of too present and interacting too much and frankly distracting the kids. So they reported this to the company, not as a complaint, is what I learned later. It was just, by the way, could you tell James, I'm James, could you just tell James to, not interact with the 4th graders quite so much during that 10-minute break? They didn't mean it this teacher didn't mean it as a complaint, just a suggestion, sort of a tap on the shoulder. By the way, James, would you mind, kind of thing. But the company that I was working for at the time interpreted that as a complaint. And I got a text from my supervisor saying, "James, we need to have a talk." And there was an online meeting, and it was my supervisor on the corporate side, her boss, the head of HR was in this meeting, and said, "James, we've had a complaint from the school that you've been, interacting with the 4th graders too much, not inappropriately, just too much." And to their credit, there were actually a couple of other issues, similar issues to this. But my point is that the school had made sort of these points to the company, but the company was interpreting them as a complaint or as complaints. And this is the sort of miscommunication that can happen when the people who are signing your paycheck over here on the corporate side are just physically separated from the people you're actually working with day to day. A second problem or frustration that often arises at your school or at your job as an ALT is the varying level of enthusiasm among the JTEs with regard to how they view the ALT. So, as you probably know, the Monbukagakusho, or the Ministry of Science and Education, has a policy that native speakers, ALTs, need to be a part of the English curriculum in Japanese schools. And so they make the broad, the rules that we need ALTs in Japan. And then the prefectural or the municipal boards of education sort of carry that out, execute that by contracting with various ALT companies and hiring you and like that. But at the ground level in the classroom, that doesn't necessarily mean that the JTE, will be eager and enthusiastic when it comes to actually making use of you, the ALT. So let me give you another example from my own experience. This was at a different school, a junior high school this time. There were 4 JTEs at the school and me, 1 ALT, and we were getting along fine. I thought there was one English teacher whose desk was right next to mine, and we got along fine. But I noticed as the weeks and months went on that I wasn't going to her classes very much. And it turns out that at that school, the JTEs could sort of raise their hand and choose to request to have me, the ALT, in their class. And this teacher, for whatever reason, although we got along fine, and she was a fine and very nice person, and I felt that to the very end of our working relationship, she just didn't really seem to want to have an ALT in the classroom. She would prefer to just work by herself, thank you very much. And there's no real solution if you get a teacher like this, or even a school like this, where the teachers generally think, hey, you know what, I don't really need the ALT. You can stay at your desk today. I'll teach class by myself, that kind of thing. There's no real solution to this. If you feel, as I felt then, a little bit frustrated, like, but I'm getting paid, right? I really ought to be going into the class with you, shouldn't I? I ought to be doing something to earn this salary, such as it is. A partial solution here is to go out of your way to prepare for the class with the teachers and ask them, in several days in advance, if possible, okay, I'm scheduled to go to your class next Tuesday. Tell me what I can do. Or I have this activity already prepared, this game. Do we have 15 minutes at the end where I can play this, please? And that can make it easier, or I should say, can make it harder for that JTE to say no to you, to say, gee, I won't be needing you this class. A third common frustration that I hear among particularly younger, newer ALTs is that there are times, maybe during the summer or in the afternoon after the students have gone home when there are just no students, the ALTs are all prepared up for their next lesson, they're ready to go, and there's just nothing to do. So, gee, can we go home early? And the company policy is, of course, no, you can't go home early. Your working hours are, for example, 8:20 to 5 o'clock in the evening, and you have to be at the school during those hours. And it may seem frustrating to the ALT, well, gee, if I'm all done, if I don't have anything to do, why do I have to stay here? And here we need to remember that, yeah, you really are hired by the school for that time period. You need to be at the school until, let's say, 5 o'clock or whatever it is in your case. If you search, there's always something to be done. There are more flashcards to print out, more handouts to make, quizzes to make, speeches to record in your own voice or whatever it is. There's always something to do. And yeah, if you really do just find yourself twiddling your thumbs, that's a good time to, well, for example, if it's not intruding, right? Or if it's appropriate to have a chat with other teachers about educational things, of course. But yeah, unless you have a special situation or some special consideration or something, you really do need to remain at your job until, 4:45 or 5 o'clock or whatever it is according to your contract, and there is no going home. So I don't have an answer here. If you feel frustration because you need to stay at the job until that time in the afternoon, well, get used to it. It sucks to be an adult, right? And the fourth frustration that you may find yourself feeling as ALT is that the school system generally is uncooperative when it comes to matching your passion for the teaching of English. That's a bit vague, I know. Let me make this concrete. So it turns out that the school system, the boards of education in most areas in Japan, make great efforts to keep the schools in their school districts very homogeneous. No board of education wants one school to stand out in any way, be it as a terribly bad school in some way, or neither do they want the school to excel in some way and stand out relative to the other schools in the district. This is why, for the most part, principals and vice principals cycle among the schools every 2 or 3 years. There's churn, more churn, the higher you go up in the admin staff like that. And that's because they don't want Kyoto or Kocho senseis, right, vice principals or principals, leaving much of a mark on any particular school. So they move them around quite a bit. So when it comes to the English curriculum too, you may find that teachers aren't as cooperative as you might wish they would be when it comes to some ideas you may have about the English curriculum. So again, bringing it back to me, here's an experience I had a couple of years ago at yet another school. We had just taught the alphabet to the third grade students, and it just occurred to me that the third graders, they only get one class per week, one 45-minute class per week, and I really wanted them to have more exposure to the ABCs, the English alphabet, than just that. So I talked with my JTE, and we got permission to put ABC cards, 26 ABC cards with pictures and letters, you know, apple for A and banana for B and like this, in the stairway on the walls, taping them to the stairway on the walls of the stairway and stairwell. Now, other teachers had already put up students' calligraphy on the walls of the stairwell there, sort of above the railings. And so we got permission to put our ABC cards on the walls under the stairs, under the railing, excuse me. So the calligraphy was on top, there was a railing, and then the ABC cards were down here, lined up here like this. And I was tremendously proud of this. And my JT helped a lot. We put them up on the walls together. We got the proper permissions. And the students really did seem to be looking at the ABC cards as they would go, you know, up and down the stairs. But about a week later, we got a complaint from a teacher. I never found out who it was. The complaint was that the ABC cards that we had put up, the alphabet cards that we had put up, were too bright and cheerful, and they were distracting the students from looking at the calligraphy, which was above the cards that we had put up. And this teacher said, could you please take these cards down? And I just thought, wow, really? I mean, our cards, our alphabet cards are too compelling, so compelling that they're distracting attention from the calligraphy. Doesn't that say more about the calligraphy, the lack of the compelling nature of the calligraphy that's up there? Doesn't that mean that we really ought to be spicing up the calligraphy more than sort of taking down these ABC cards? But again, this hadn't been done at the school before, apparently. Alphabet cards had never been put up in the stairwell or anywhere else that I'm aware of. And there's just this general idea that we've never done it before, there's no need to do it now, take them down, like that. I'll confess that I got frustrated here, but we did take them down. But I did feel like, you know, my God, you know, this school seems to be going out of its way not to really stand out educationally. Okay, so yeah, thank you for watching. Those are my 4, you know, frustrations you may feel at your job as an ALT. There's no real solutions to any of these, but at a minimum, just be aware that if you feel these, you know, frustrated sometimes because the way things are, yeah, you know what? You're not alone. Believe me, you're not alone. Yeah, it's just kind of the nature of the job. And, you know, take a broad view. It's a terrific job. It really is. I love being an ALT. I would not want to be. I have been other things. This is my favorite job in the world. I love it. So hope you guys found this useful. And as usual, I answer any questions you may leave in the comments. But otherwise, I don't give a rat's ass if you like or subscribe. But I do answer the questions in the comments if you want to leave something down there. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.